Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Reset for Life moment. Great to have you join with us. You may have noticed in the news over the past few days that we are starting to finally hear talk about the beginning of the easing of the restrictions due to this pandemic. The end is in sight, friends. I can't wait. Life will soon be getting back to normal. The question that I have is, what does normal look like now? My suspicion is that we will all have to adjust to a new normal. I suspect that life as we know it is never going to be the same again. This really goes for the church also. Let me ask you this. What are you going to do if we go back to church and church doesn't look the same? Let me ask you another question. Is your version of church God's version of church? To echo the words of our fellowship's General Superintendent, David Wells, our prayer is that churches don't return to normal simply because a lot of what we do is the commandments of men. It's a man-made idea of what church should look like, and frankly, it wasn't all that effective. We aren't the powerhouse that the early church was. Truthfully, I think a lot of this is because we have a lot of traditions at our church that aren't necessarily directives from God. We've made them up and we've placed them on a pedestal, but they don't really serve any eternal purpose. In Mark chapter 7, verse 5, Jesus was confronted by the religious elite, the religious snobs of the day. They were mad because Jesus' disciples didn't follow their tradition of washing their hands before they ate. In verse 6, and this is the best, by the way, in verse 6, Jesus responds by calling them hypocrites. And then he says in verse 7 to 9 that they were guilty of, quote, teaching man-made ideas as commandments from God. And that they, quote, ignored God's law and substituted their own tradition. So was Jesus saying that we shouldn't wash our hands before a meal? Of course not. And millions of moms since then have agreed with him. You see, it's a good thing to wash your hands before dinner. And after you go to the washroom, and lately after you go to Costco, and after you fill up with gas, and after you go anywhere or do anything, it's a good thing to wash your hands. The issue really isn't washing our hands. The issue is creating a man-made law to wash our hands, and then selling it as if it's a law from God. It's a man-made tradition that shouldn't be on the same level as a command from God. Now, I want you to think about our church services. How much of what we do on a Sunday or throughout the week is a good idea, but we treat it as if it's a command from God? And what if, when we get back from all of this, our times together reflect only what God wants us to do and not what we hold as important? What if church looked very different? What if we started using our building to serve us rather than us serving it? What if we existed to serve our community and engage our community on a whole new level? What if church stopped existing as a museum for the saints and started existing as a hospital for the spiritually sick? What if disciple making became the highest priority for us? What if some programming in our church ceased to exist? And I know that might ruffle some of your feathers, but what if? What if some Sundays, instead of the services constituting, music and announcements and offering and sermon like they usually do, we switched it up and we empowered and released people to serve their community instead, to literally go and spread the light and the love of Jesus? What if we stopped doing all of the things in any of our services that makes us feel good, and we instead started doing some things that please the heart of God? I'm just asking for a friend. Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 47 gives us a picture of what the real church should look like. It was the early church, and the things that they did consisted of disciple making, being together, the miraculous, profit sharing or a spirit of sharing, worship of God, and favor with their community. And that's it. Those 6 things literally shook the known world. All of the frivolous things that are the commandments of man aren't found anywhere. You see, the basics were enough. They were sufficient. Those basics scratch the itch of both those connected to the church and those outside of the church. So let me ask you again, what would you do if you came back to our church and it looked different? Would you find another church that looked the way you think that it should? Or would you ask God to help you see the value in this new church model that hopefully is streamlined, intentional, and biblical? It's really something that I want to challenge you with, and it's something that I need you to think about so that when we come back together, you, like me and the rest of the pastors on staff, are ready to go with God. We are ready to do whatever it takes to see God made famous, to let our communities know that He is still in the saving and the healing and the forgiving business. That's the real message that this church has to offer, and that's my Reset for Life word for you today. Before I let you go, just a quick reminder for you that we are holding our food banks now twice a month. And if you would like to help out in any way, please email our food bank coordinator, Leslie at christianlifecenter.ca. Also tonight, our online video prayer time is starting at 7 p.m. We'd love to have you join with us, and you can find the link in our Instagram and Facebook bios. God bless everyone. We hope that you stay safe, enjoy life. See ya.